I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by our guest today, Elodie Yung, to talk all about the cleaning lady. And I wanted to start by talking about how you initially envisioned this character that you're playing within the show, Thony, because, obviously the show is based on an original Argentinian series, but really has its own full identity. And it sounds like Miranda Kwok and Melissa Carter, who are the creator and showrunner of the series, also really looked to what you brought to the role and aspects of you that they could really bring into the character, even down to the name being one from a number of suggestions and a family member's name. And so I was really interested in a lot of those early conversations that you had and how you really got to pitch in certain aspects as to who Thony has ended up being for us all in the show.
Yeah, well, it's funny because for the premiere, I went to Melissa's for a dinner. And she said to me immediately, as soon as you had the part, and we suggested that we'd embrace your background, your Cambodians, the Cambodian side of me. Then she said, you took immediate ownership of it and came with this list of names. And to me, it was mine. As soon as they said, okay, you're on board, I'm like, okay, great. Let's be creative all together, and let me suggest what it is for me to be Cambodian. If you want this character, initially her name was Reina, and I'm like, this is absolutely not Cambodian. So let's start with the name. What's on the surface. So I gave them like a bunch of lists of the people in my family, really, and I was like, this is an opportunity for me to honor, have a little moment to honor my background, and then the members of my family. So we ended up with Thony, who's one of my cousins, one of my dad's cousins, and but she's my aunt. We say aunt, and she was so happy, that she gets to her name on screen. It's, all my family is very proud. So it started this way, and then I never envision anything. I think I do embrace things as they come, and I tend to work from. How can I say it? I respond to things more than thinking ahead of things. When Michael Offer during the pilot came to me and say, "Hey, Grover, what do you think? What do you think Thony would have, like, as maybe like an object, a trinket, or how do you see her room?" I was like, well, I do feel that Thony has a big, because of the journey she's going through, and because she is Cambodian, I feel that she's got a strong faith, and I would love, then, if you want to show it, I would love to have like any Cambodian in their house, they have this little wooden Buddha. So they found one, and because I thought that she would hold on to her faith, because she's going through so much. So we did this, and I think for her psychology, it just came to me as we went through, as she dives in more and more in difficult situations. And she's someone who is extremely resilient. She is stronger than me. She is, she's very clever. I don't know. I just thought that she taught me a lot. She taught me a lot, and this inner strength and calmness that I don't always have. I think she taught me that, and I think it comes from my background as well. For my dad, having this inner strength, because he came from Cambodia and he had to survive this genocide. This is something that I never really comprehended. But this is something that I think real survivors have. It's this, this inner strength and calmness, and just to like keep going in life no matter what, because this is what life's about. You have to live. So I do think that I had this unconsciously, while I was doing it, because Thony fights for her own life because she's threatened by the mob, right? But more importantly, she fights for her son, and she needs to keep strong, and she needs to try to find some steadiness in this world that's just crumbling, you know, underneath her feet. So yeah, it's so funny because it's during interviews that I get to look at it, that I get to look at what I've done and, you know, this journey, but I never plan anything ahead. And it's so interesting how sometimes you kind of meet your character and you bring, I brought, you know, inevitably a lot of my own knowledge and experience of life, but I do think that she taught me a lot as well.
I think that idea of the inner strength in her as a character that you were talking about there is one of the really interesting aspects of who she is and the way that she shoulders a lot of the situations that we see her thrown into in the show, because there's extreme circumstances, but her responses to it are not extreme. The way that she navigates through them are not extreme. It's all about the personal and the internal strength that you were talking about. And so how did that inform a lot of the choices that you ended up making in scenes when you were filming these moments, in terms of thinking about the response that she had and the way that she would shoulder these experiences?
It's you know, initially we had like there were a bunch of scenes initially, you know, in the pilot and maybe the first or two episodes. And I was asking those questions to Melissa Carter, and we had conversations because I'm like, it does feel that sometimes the way it was written initially, that she had this not chip on her shoulder, but like she had a quick answer. And you know, and I just wanted to make sure that she would not just always come back as I didn't want this for her. I don't know if I expressed myself very clearly, because she is in the situation was she needs to survive and fight for her kid. She's threatened by, you know, a crime syndicate, which is not being threatened by, I don't know, someone random on the street, and then I can come back with, you know, something strong immediately. I wanted her to have this sense of, I need to kind of think before I talk, which is not always my case. And Medusa was like, look how you are. You know, you're kind of like, you feisty, you respond. I'm like, yes, but we need to, you know, I wanted to make sure that we had the context, because I didn't want our man to be a false obstacle either. You know, I wanted to feel that there's a real threat. So maybe this is where this kind of like calm for me came from, like, because this is how I felt like I just felt like this was Tony's reaction, but she can't help but being, you know, protective, and she can't help to speak her mind as well at times, no matter what. Which shows her intelligence sometimes, you know, at chosen moments, and strength. But I needed this balance because I really wanted us to feel the real threat, you know.
And how did you go about exploring her moral compass as a character? Because that's also a really interesting dynamic to look at within the show, because she comes across as someone with a very clear set of morals, and yet with the complexities of things that she's facing in episode by episode, and as she gets drawn deeper into certain situations, as the FBI are asking her to turn on Armand, who she's developing a friendship with at this point, you know, she has to constantly reassess and look at the choices that she's making, and she's not always getting to make the choice that she necessarily wants to. And so how did you set about exploring that and looking at the way that it's almost has to become a moving line because of the situations around her?
Well, I only approached any decisions that she makes from I really try to put myself in her shoes, you know. I know that coming from the showrunner, coming from Miranda, they, you know, they set up the frame. They throw at me horrible situations. My job here was only to react to those situations and protect myself and my kid. And so I do believe that the way I've approached her reactions was only from an empathetic point of view. And it's like, how would I do if me, Elodie, as a mom, I'd be thrown in this situation? And how would I react, you know, immediately? So this is how I approached her journey. At times, it did feel that, you know, there was an evolution in Tony, because by episode 6 or 7, I was like, oh, but this is not I'm not used to this type of, this line or this type of reaction. And there is a very subtle evolution throughout the series because Toni is resilient, because she has to adapt. Then she, probably without knowing herself, like I didn't even notice that I was changing, but she is changing. She is adapting. She's assessed the environment. She has she needs to figure it out with what tools she gets now. Initially, her plan was to come on a medical visa and get a bone marrow transplant for her son. This didn't work out. The system fails, and then she decides to become undocumented, and she just in the hope of getting another cure. That was her plan. Now, bad things happen, or things happen that she didn't want, she didn't plan, and she just had to take the best decisions that she could, in the moment, and then deal with this, and it kind of unfolds like this in front of her, and she just needs to like keep up. Yeah.
And with what you were just mentioning about the show's exploration of what it means to be undocumented in America, it explores that both with Toni and with her sister-in-law, Fiona, and the two different ways that they've ended up in that circumstance with one another. But I love the fact that the show really addresses not just the larger issues with that, but the day-to-day, taking her son to the ER is going to carry risks. And so the choices that she makes based on that, even just the idea of getting behind the wheel and make sure you don't speed, because if you get pulled over, that's a risk. And so how through Toni did you really want to express and explore what it means in the day to day, and the fact that that's something that's always at the back of her mind with every choice that she makes?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's what's really clever about this show. It's because it does put these two women, Fiona and Toni, they are undocumented, but it puts them in the context of their daily life in their family. Them going to work, which implies driving, and all of that. So it does bring this human perspective to the narrative, and they're not numbers. We're not, and then it's not like, oh, I don't know. Sometimes I do watch the news, and I do feel, my heart breaks when I hear horrible news. But there's also like kind of not numbness, but you don't always get to get close to what's going on. This fiction kind of helps, I think, with looking at the life of these people, these women who are undocumented, and it brings us to on just a simple human level to which we can all relate. So I think it was quite clever to do it this way. This is the point of view, the key to look at their situation. It's looking at these women at home with their kids, and having to work without papers, and yeah, it's not a really good answers and very clear answer that I gave you just right then, but this is just it. It's just looking at them in their daily life, so we can relate.
Yeah. I also really love the dynamic that you have on screen between Toni and Fiona, her
Yeah.
sister-in-law, because it's something where for Toni, she's come to the States, her husband isn't with her, so in turn she's having to single parent her child through all of this. But then she has this kind of co-parenting with her sister-in-law because they're both in the same home with each of their children. And so how did that shape the way that you thought about Toni as a parent, both with the dynamic of being without her husband, but then having this different support system that she's able to really lean on?
It does feel like that Fiona and Toni are the couple of the the couple of the show. They are sisters-in-law, and they support each other. There's a brief moment where, because of what Toni's going through, and because she wants to protect her sister-in-law, and she wants to protect her family. She decides to lie, and not because she doesn't want to involve Fiona in what she's going through. And same with Fiona, she has her own issues and problems, and she doesn't really want to share it with me because she doesn't want to impact me and Luca. But they do have an extreme strong bond, and to me and to Martha, they feel like proper sisters, and they always have each other's back. But it's like, despite the differences and the arguments, with your love, with your partner in crime, despite that, then you always kind of reconnect and then have each other's backs. And this is what, Fiona and Toni are doing. And to me, they're the yin and the yang. You've got Fiona, who's just quick to react, impetuous, and a bit troublesome. And then you've got Toni, who she uses more of she reflects more. She's more calm, but she gets into trouble as well. But they are like, they're the heart of this show. I think, it's the mother's love. They all both have that. Everything they do, it's because they love their kids, and that's it. They'll go until to the moon to protect and provide for their kids.
Yeah. I also know that when you were developing this character, that the dialect was something that was really important to you, that you worked on as well, and figuring out the specificity of, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, this being a Cambodian character, but who's been living in the Philippines for several years and now has come over to the States. And so what were some of the specific sounds within the dialect that were important for you to capture with all of that in mind?
Well, I really wanted to represent. It's the first time that I get to play Cambodian, so I just like any opportunity just to really represent my roots, to honor my dad, and just put it on screen. So yes, Toni has lived in the Philippines, but what I worked on mostly was mixing, because she's lived so long. We're assuming in the Philippines, her English is flawless, like a lot of people there. So we have this how do you say, she's fluent in English, but we wanted to work on sprinkling some Cambodian, consonants and sounds there. So this is how I worked with Doug Aronoff, my dialect coach. So worked on going more towards the American, because that's how it would sound more, in the Philippines or in Cambodia, if I had to speak English. Rather than my English is a mix between French and British English, because this is how I learned it 10 years ago and I lived there. So I had to clean up my accent of any Brits and any French, and then go towards the American with some Cambodian sounds. And so this is how I ended up with this accent. And I worked constantly on it. So to really separate my voice from Toni's voice.
And in working on any television show, the pace at which you have to work, and particularly when you're the lead and you're in every single scene of the show, is always so incredibly fast. And so what were some of the challenges that came with having to be able to dive into scenes, get scripts really last minute, and really have to make a lot of creative choices for your character without a lot of time necessarily to sit there and really digest what the scripts were giving you?
I think I thrive in last minute thing. This is how I was when I was at school, at university. This was right, let's just focus and then let's just do it and dive in. Well, this is how I felt. We only have 3 more days before the exam. Let's just cram it. So although I had more time, to prepare because of the pandemic, so the pilot was kind of a luxury for me. But as for the series, it was like you said, it was nonstop. It was really hard to maintain stamina. That was my thing. Because I was in pretty much every single shot, and then they throw new text at you. So it's like shooting one episode, working on the second one. And I did find a really good, I discovered a really good a way for me to carry on focusing and delivering and being present in the scenes I was shooting on the day, as well as just working, like prepping for the rest, which was just working nonstop. So when I was on set, I was just working nonstop, whether acting, whether learning, and I had the help of assistants just to read the lines with me and just doing it nonstop. I have a wonderful husband, but he was busy with Mina, our 3-year-old, and at some point I just had to give him a break, because usually what we do, whether it's him working or me, it's we come back home and then we're like, can you run lines with me? And then just carry on until we go to bed. And that was not a real break for me at first. We did this the first month, and then he would be knackered. I would go to bed and I would dream of the series, and it was not good. So I just constantly work while I was on set. And as soon as, in my car going back, and as soon as I was home, I was just like, basta, I'm just here for you guys, and we can just have because you need to disconnect, because otherwise it's just consuming. But it's a real challenge, and I love it. I love challenges. It's great. And then, when you're pushed, then you tap in you just like develop like new resources, and you can do it. And I hope I maintained it. I really hope I maintained the level of what I wanted to achieve, which was just like trying to be truthful every time, tap into my truth every time, every scene. So we'll see. I think I did, I think I treated Tony pretty well. I think so. I don't know.
Well, in the episodes that I've seen so far, it definitely pays off. And then, the other thing in taking on a lead role in a show is there's a huge responsibility that comes with that, even beyond your performance, in the way that you're showing up for the rest of the cast and for the crew. And essentially it's putting you into a leadership position. And so what was important to you about the way that you showed up for the rest of the cast and the way that you showed up for the crew beyond the work that you were doing as an actor?
I think it's being at service. I really thought that, I would always I always ask if they need anything. For my, first of all, I like to feel that we are an ensemble with the cast and with the crew. And it really did feel that it was okay. We're in the groove. It always takes a little moment. And with COVID and being masked all the time, it did take a little minute to feel that, we were all part of the crew, and we can do, because you are working, even if you're just, you're working with your partner, but you're working with the cameraman and the sound guy, and, everyone's here. So there was a fantastic flow between everyone. And it's just like, I love that, like feeling that we all on board and we're telling the story we should be telling, and this is our focus. For me, the storytelling is more important than anything. So I wanted to make sure that that we were prepared, and I always love to, we all prepare differently. But for example, with Oliver, and with Martha, we did a lot of line reading. It's like, do you want to run lines for this? Do you want to? Can I help with this? What do you think of this line? Shall we change this? So with Melissa, the showrunner, also, she's so open to any suggestions. And so it did feel to me that it was an extremely creative and inclusive project. And I think that's the key. I want everyone to feel that they contribute. And I want to support everyone in their process. And I felt that, everyone was really responding and supportive as well. I mean, Martha, Aidan, Oliver, they're all really wonderful people. And then just working without any ego as well. It's like there was no time for this. We had like a bigger story to tell. So we were really supportive of each other. I think it shows. I do think that we've improved a lot of things on the day, and we had a lot of fun, because although this show is so, especially for me, I think for Martha as well, emotionally, it was kind of draining. You see, like the scenes we're going through, if you want to really tap into your truth, you have to dive in, and you have to when you can't really fake it. So for me, it was so important to like laugh a lot in between. And Martha is just like, you can't be around this woman and not just have a great time. And, so we're just laughing a lot, which I think was the cement of the show as well.
It is a really great ensemble, and I really love the work that you've done on the episodes I've seen so far and look forward to the rest of the season. Thank you so much, Elodie.
Thank you so much, Mara. Have a good one.